What is up, YouTube? It's me, your boy, Daring Lime.
Yeah, that's perfect. So the person who just did that intro is my friend Johnny. And I think
Oh,
what
we're going off that. Okay.
yeah, that's it. That's it. That was perfect. You got me out of my rut. So here's
Yeah.
Johnny, and why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, real quick before we start, can I call you by your real name? Dude, does chat know your real name?
Chat, the very involved knows. So yeah, it's fine. It's not a big
Okay.
secret. If you can
All
use
right.
my real name, I'll allow it.
Okay, cool. Well, we got a hero and we got an alter ego though. That's cool.
Yeah,
Um, Hi, I'm Johnny. That's Jack Nicholson up there. Um, Alec, which is Daring Lime's real name. Alec
yeah.
and I are
How could you?
buddies from school, and uh, we both love board games, and so uh, he introduced me to Champions a little while ago. So we're going to talk about that today and my experiences with it, what I like, what I maybe don't like, and yeah, we got some good stuff lined up.
Yeah, I thought it'd be really cool having someone who's new to the game actually share their experience with the game, because most of the time that you see someone talking about the game, that's going to be someone who's played like a bunch instead of someone that actually has a new experience. So I thought my friend Johnny would be perfect for that. And we have Ludwig Boltzmann's tombstone over there because because we met in advanced thermodynamics at school, and that's also like a callback to my thermodynamics of Marvel Champions video that I posted a long time ago. And yeah, and why do we have the spiders? Oh, it's because it's your favorite
Oh,
movie, right?
it's my favorite animated movie of all time, and easily top 5 favorite movies of all time. Yeah. The first Spider-Verse.
Yeah, because we're supposed to talk about your experience with Marvel.
Yes. Yeah, we can talk about a little bit of the background there. I also wanna say, mentioning Ludwig Boltzmann, the way that Alec and I, like, first became buddies is I was helping a couple people out with homework just because I had some experience with software in the class, and so Alec was like, "I could use some help," and, one of the first questions you asked me was, "Well, what do you like to do outside of school?" And I said, "I don't know. I like to play board games and tabletop games with my boys."
Yeah, I remember
And
that.
very reasonably, Alex said, "Oh, you have sons?" I said, "Oh, no, no. My boys are just my friends."
I had forgot that I asked that. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, Johnny knew the software and thermo, and it was my first thermo class, but I was in the graduate level one because of reasons. So I needed to play catch up with thermo and the software.
Yeah.
And Johnny does
But
not have sons as far as I'm aware.
and not as far as I'm aware either. But anyway, Spider-Man, Spider-Verse. Uh, yeah, that is easily one of the most impressive movies I've seen. And that, so I mean, I've seen a bunch of other Marvel movies. I was really into the first Avengers movie. I love Joss Whedon's writing. Big fan of Firefly, which you still need to watch. But
Yeah, I haven't seen that yet.
um, yeah, the Spider Verse was the first one where I was really just blown away, and it made me get more into Marvel comics. I think the following summer, um, yeah, I was living in Madison, Wisconsin. I didn't have much to do, so a couple times a week I would go down to the local comic shop and get some Marvels. They were running the War of the Realms storyline at the time, which was really neat.
I remember
Kind
that
of
one. That was
involved,
really cool. I didn't get it, but
yeah.
it looked really cool.
Hmm. It was. I think the big bad was Malekith, who was a Thor villain.
Is that
But it
the elf?
involved, yeah, Dark Elf, yeah. Um, it involved like everyone in the Marvel universe, pretty much. Like even Howard the Duck was in there.
Well, Howard the
So,
Duck has to be
um,
there. I'm excited for him to come to
yeah.
Champions. I think he will eventually.
Do you think so?
I
Oh
really hope
boy,
so. He's gotta.
that yeah. that'd be something. But so I was reading those. I was also picking up Moon Knight comics because Moon Knight is probably my favorite superhero. Just he looks so cool, um, and also around that time, the his comics were being written by Max Bemis, who is the lead singer of Say Anything, which is a band I enjoy. So that was really neat. And then I think I was also reading a lot of Daredevil, a little bit of Spider Man. Um, and so that was my main experience with Marvel beforehand was, seeing a lot of the blockbusters, but then getting really into um, Spider-Verse, and from there dabbling a little bit in the comics, where I'm certainly not an expert, but have a lot of love for some of these characters here.
Nice. I think that's the perfect transition to why is Johnny?
Why am I? Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
You don't know why?
I'm I don't know. I never had the birds and the bees talk, but I think it has something to do with those.
Yeah. Speaking of birds, we have a wingspan.
Wow, that was beautiful. That was beautiful. Yeah, a little bit of my gaming experience. I would say my two biggest tabletop games. Well, my three biggest tabletop games here represented are Wingspan, Dungeons and Dragons. There's me in the wizard costume there with my old roommate's cat Doc, and then Terraforming Mars. Those two board games on either side are I've spent many, many, many hours playing. Both the physical version and the digital versions.
Yeah.
Um,
And you actually introduced me to Terraforming Mars.
yeah,
And Titanium
that.
Man strategy didn't work. You keep trying
Yeah,
to tell me
I told Alex
titanium's really good, but I don't think you can do only titanium every time and have it work.
no. I told him, this resource titanium, it's pretty valuable. You should consider upping your titanium production if you can. And then he drew into almost zero cards that could spend titanium, so there was no real use for it, and
I had what
he lost
the
badly.
like ship production one, so I was just building a ship every turn, and I got 1 point, and then it was horrible.
Yeah, yeah, that he played that card, and I told him, "Oh, that is maybe one of the worst cards in the game. I'm sorry to tell you."
Yeah, so
But you had
that
nothing else
didn't
to
go
spend
well.
titanium on, so
No,
it
yeah,
it worked out as
I
well as it
eventually
could, I
won
suppose.
one, but not that time.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
guess I don't know how are you doing? How are you doing today, Johnny?
Today, I'm doing good. I had some autumn squash soup. I'm staying at my parents' house for a week here. My sister just got married on Friday at just a little small wedding, but I came in and surprised the whole family. So
Wait, did
yeah,
no
it's been
one know
good.
you were driving out to Wisconsin?
My parents knew. They were the
Okay.
ones who said, "Oh, well, why don't we keep it a secret?" So, other than that, I get to surprise all my siblings and my grandma. So
That's really cool. And then now
yeah,
you're on a podcast with me talking about games. Obviously, the
yeah,
most
and
important thing you had to do this weekend.
that this is cool too. Like I've been really looking forward to this.
I have too.
Also, by the way, I didn't get a chance to say, but happy birthday.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was my birthday yesterday. I didn't tell anyone
Hmm.
except for all of YouTube.
Yeah,
Just none of the people that are like in my life.
right.
My
I'm
mom
kind of the
called
same
me the
way.
day before my birthday and wished me happy birthday.
Yeah.
She forgot. It was I've been out of the house now for college, so her and my grandma just mixed it up. It was really funny. It was all wholesome and whatnot. And they called me again on my actual
Few
birthday,
points
but I
for
thought that
trying.
was really funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. So post birthday, yeah, I'm happy to talk to you about the game, and I think we can do that now. I think everyone has an
Yeah.
adequate character introduction to my friend Johnny. Also, you're in the chat sometimes. Not a lot,
Yeah,
but
here
you
and
have
there.
been there. And now,
I like to lurk too.
yeah, and now we can talk about your first game,
Yeah.
which this was maybe, I don't know. Some could say this was the incorrect way, but I thought it was really funny because, like what Johnny is saying, the spider characters are some of his like favorite, and the Spider-Verse movie is really cool. And I love the mutagen formula scenario, so I thought it would be fun to just jump into Green Goblin, and especially since I was playing and Paulina was playing, Johnny didn't have to worry about like running the rules. So I don't know. You can talk
Yeah,
a little bit how you felt about that later. But I was playing Black Panther leadership. Paulina was playing my Aunt May as an absolute unit Peter Parker deck, and you were playing an aggression Miles deck, right?
aggression miles. Yep.
Yeah. I guess just how'd you feel as a brand new player on your first game?
So I was a little bit of a deer in the headlights, where I remember kind of just sitting back and watching you guys run the villain phase, for example, and kind of just getting used to it that way. I We did not crack open a rule book or anything like that before I started. I was just relying on you guys completely. Um, and I was drawing my hand of cards each turn and asking probably 100 questions
Yeah.
per hand. Um, but it was all slowly starting to come together. Um, but yeah, that first game, I was kind of just uh, trying to get a feel for the rules, but also looking through this deck, which you guys had prepared for me, and looking at some of the art and going, "Oh man, this is uh, like really cool art they got going on here." I really love that aspect of this game, um,
Yeah. I
and
love the art too. Especially on
yeah,
Black Panther and Green Goblin on this slide. It's just I love both of those arts so much.
hmm yeah. Green Goblin also, I had no sense of scale for how difficult that encounter was, but
Yeah.
um, it felt like I was on my back heels the whole time, going, "This feels catastrophic, but we're kind of cooking."
Yeah. Well, there was that. I kind of popped off on Black Panther at the end because I had
I don't
that all
remember.
those. Remember, I had all those allies out, and I played Wakanda Forever like 2 or 3 times, and I cleared the whole board of minions.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, it was a lot. Like, yeah, there was a lot going on. Like, I was never worried about losing, but also my chat's convinced that or mostly Joshy, but also I think most of my chat's convinced that I'm way more optimistic than most players.
Sure, sure.
But yeah, that was yeah. How do you feel about like I don't know. I guess you said that you were um like a deer in the headlights at first, but and we're just feeling like everything was chaotic. But like, was it still fun even though it was chaotic and you didn't know everything that was going on?
I enjoyed Yeah. The answer is yes. I'm trying to think. For me, one of the most rewarding parts of it is seeing new, allies, how they come into play. And so every time you guys were playing a new ally or I drew into a new ally, I was thinking, "Oh, that's kind of a unique little mechanic there." I'm interested to see how that plays out. Um, so I think,
And you haven't
yeah, we can
really
talk.
done much leadership yet, right?
No, not a ton. I did Cyclops for a couple of games, but
Oh yeah, I
not a
remember
whole
that.
lot of leadership. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Um,
really like allies too.
yeah. Something you've said once or twice in your videos is that they're probably the most powerful card type. They just introduce so many, applications, which could be niche, but
Yeah,
being able to build around, for example, having Sunfire in an aggression deck and being able to have a relatively reliable, cheap way to discard an upgrade or an attachment that the villain has. That's that's one thing. That's just the first example that comes to mind of some really fun mechanics. And I previously was not into deck building games, um, but now that I have a good understanding of this one, I really I am excited to build more decks with more allies.
Yeah, and you have
And
access to my entire card pool too, so you don't have to buy anything.
yeah, that don't hurt. That don't hurt.
And then, so I guess you've faced a few simpler villains now, because we went through Rise
Mhm.
of Red Skull, which we can talk about later. But you saw Absorbing
Yeah.
Man, you've seen Rhino, which are like normally ones that people recommend starting with. Looking
Yeah.
back, would it have been better if I introduced you with a simpler villain?
100%. Yeah. No question. It was
Yeah.
fun, but it was just a lot.
Yeah. Okay. So note for anyone trying to get their friends to play, uh, don't do Green Goblin, even though it
Mhm.
worked this time. Yeah, and yeah, I guess we can move on from this game unless there's anything notable that you wanted to say about this game. But it's probably the most
Um,
hazy because it was the longest to go and when you knew the least about what
right,
was going on.
right. The one other thing I would remark on is, Miles can put out both, um, like, stuns and confuses and give himself tough, right?
Yeah, that's really
I mean,
powerful.
yeah. I think that ends up being maybe a good teaching tool where if you're starting someone out with the game, having ways to show how those cards work is probably advantageous. And so Miles was maybe an ideal teaching tool to start
Okay.
with that mechanic.
So
Yeah,
Miles, good hero to introduce with, but we probably should have done Rhino.
yeah, that's fair.
Okay. That makes sense. And then what was next? Oh yeah, this game. I like this game a lot. You can see that Gambit don't take no damage. And that's because when I was playing Gambit, I didn't take a damage the whole the whole game. I just kept saying that over and over again. It was
You
right
guys had
after we
just
watched
seen
the
Deadpool.
Deadpool movie too, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so I was fresh off of seeing Channing Gambit, and it was like Gambit don't take no damage the whole time. Had so much fun
yep.
with that, and it was I was also watching the old X-Men cartoon, and there was this like episode where Jubilee was telling a story to a bunch of kids, and she was like making it up about how she was like this elf in a fantasy land. She was like an elf warrior, and then she had Trollverine and Gambit was a thief, and they teamed up to take on Magneto. And Jubilee was, of course, like the hero of her own story that she was telling, and it was just a really fun, like episode, like fantasy cutaway thing that I really enjoyed. So I wanted to model that in a scenario. So I took Mysterio because I'm like, oh, this could be one of Mysterio's illusions, and I gave Mysterio the fantasy modular set and then we played these heroes, and it was really on theme, and I had a lot of fun with it. And Jubilee had just came out at this point too. Anyways, that's enough of that. What do you think of this game and Wolverine and Mysterio and all that stuff?
Yeah. This was my first Wolverine game, if I'm not mistaken, and then I kept playing him into the next, slide that we'll talk about, the first my first campaign. Um, First of all, I love Wolverine, and I think maybe that part of the reason I steered towards him is because I had just been saying to you, I had maybe a half dozen games under my belt at this point,
Yeah,
um,
which we
and
skipped
I
over the Thor thing.
yeah,
That whole
we could
debacle.
talk about Thor. It was I was a little underwhelmed with him, but it was also a game where I didn't necessarily, um, it didn't play to my strengths because
No,
you guys kept getting dealt minions, and I was just sitting over there with none of them. Um,
because because
but
I was trying to remember if I was trying to give you like a more consistent version of like a character that fits into that like bruiser archetype that Thor
mhm,
does. And then was Wolverine. I think that was it. I could be misremembering though.
yeah. Well, the part I remember about Wolverine is that I had just been saying to you, I'm starting to realize health is a resource that I can spend. not resource in the strict definition of
Yeah.
this um, game, but
Health is money.
health is money. Yeah, it's a currency,
Yeah.
and sometimes I'm willing to just face tank an attack without defending, so that I can have a more output on my following turn.
Hmm.
Um, and so, yeah, I think realizing that and then playing Wolverine was just a perfect. It just felt like I was firing on all cylinders, and it just feels very good to pierce through a tough card
Yeah,
to
it
me.
does.
Uh,
The
so having that ability with Wolverine was also very rewarding.
the thing you're talking about with health as a resource is actually really, really interesting with these three characters because Jubilee has very low health and no defense events really. She only has stuns
Mm,
and confuses to stay alive. So she
yeah,
never wants to take damage. And then
sure.
Gambit doesn't really have he doesn't want to take damage, but he could tank something because I don't know. But he has that 3 defense stat. So his highest output is actually on his basic abilities is just his defense. And then
Yeah,
Wolverine just is using that health and just taking so much damage and wants to take damage like with the claws and stuff. I think that's really interesting.
right. Yeah, and boy, I also just I love Wolverine just as a character concept too. Um,
Like in the
just a
comics, you mean, or like with the mechanics they did in this?
well, both actually, both. Um, I haven't read a ton of X-Men comics, but I just remember, you know, seeing the X-Men movies when I was younger, and always him being my favorite. Um, and Hugh Jackman's just so great.
Yeah, he was pretty powerful.
If you haven't seen his 2008 Oscars opening song, you should go and watch that because it's just he is a modern Renaissance man, and I think that for just like 8-minute song is a perfect encapsulation of that.
I like the idea
But
of Wolverine being like the greatest showman.
yeah,
It's so
yeah,
funny.
and boy, yeah, just go watch that song. I won't spoil it for anyone who's listening to this, but um, anyway, he is yeah a longtime favorite of mine. Um, my roommates too, both Kian and Levi, are big fans of him, and I don't know, he's just a yeah. We can talk a little bit later too about the ways that um, game mechanics bring out the cool parts of heroes in the lore, just
Hmm.
how superpowers are adapted to game mechanics in this way. Um, but Wolverine, I think, is a great, really fun example in my mind. So he quickly became a favorite of mine. And I also have to shout out you for setting up this scenario with Mysterio, Master of Illusion, and um, being able to recreate this X-Men episode uh, within the context of the game. I thought was I don't know. I like to play games that way, and I think maybe you do too. Where
Yeah, I
there's
do.
um, yeah, you told me about your Magic the Gathering deck that's just all bears, right?
I forgot about that. Yeah, if Joe, if you see this, thank you for letting me access all your bear cards. He told me that there's a
Yeah.
real bear archetype that came out later on, but mine was just literally going through his box of green cards and just pulling out every bear and throwing it into a deck, and it actually worked.
Yeah. I don't know, finding mini challenges within games or upping the ante for yourself in a certain way is a really enjoyable mechanic for me. Um, yeah, for example, I watch a lot of old school RuneScape YouTubers who do that with their snowflake Iron Men. I'm probably speaking Greek to a lot of people right now, but
I
um,
only vaguely
finding
know what that
ways,
means from your PowerPoint you gave.
yes, Yeah, I gave a PowerPoint called "Did Settled's Ex-Girlfriend Wipe Swampletics?" And that is just a whole mess of words to most 99.99% of humanity. But um, I'm out there for the 0.01%.
Yeah,
Um, no, yeah. So that's an example of a game where um, you're working within the confines to make things more interesting and more challenging. The analogy I gave in that PowerPoint was you're trying to write a magnum opus on the piano, um, but you're doing it with your feet, and you're only allowed to play in one octave, and you're trying to come up with something beautiful.
that's
Um,
difficult.
yeah, but there's so much reward in that, and sometimes it's reward in watching other people put themselves through that. Um,
I think that's part
but
of what's been so enjoyable for me about going back to the Precon decks lately in the core box. I just like going
sure,
back to when
yeah,
they're like it was the only option. And also it's so interesting seeing how much better I got at the game because I struggled so much at the beginning with different villains and those decks. Now I go back and I'm like, yeah, these decks are great and I can just take out the villains with them, which is not the case when I started playing.
yeah. I think it's probably also just the wisdom of knowing how the rules work now.
Yeah, and knowing exactly what cards are in the villain's deck. That helps too.
Yeah, that too. That absolutely too. I I don't think I've looked through a villain's deck before we have played against them for the first time. I think I'm still kind of relying on you and Paulina to guide me a little bit in terms of some of the deck building,
Yeah.
saying, "Oh, well, we don't expect any crisis icons in this deck," or this villain is going to spam tough cards for himself and minions. So, um,
Yeah, things like that are good to know going in. I think it's
yeah,
still fun though, because like every time I get a new campaign box, I always sleeve the hero. I read the hero cards just so I know how the character works that I'm playing, but I don't read any of the villain cards for the entire campaign box, and I just go in blind.
mm,
And it's really cool doing that.
I love that. I love that.
Maybe on the
Any
next
game,
box you could do it with me.
okay, that sounds great. That sounds great because any game experience that I can have with as little foreknowledge as possible, I really value that and appreciate that. And that was in 2020. I played a video game
Oh, is
called
this
Outer
the one?
Wilds.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
This is the one. I gotta mention it. We're talking about games, and this is not only my favorite game of all time, but I like to
It's
say
the magnum opus.
it's one of the 2 most important works of art I've ever encountered. I say that with no exaggeration. The other one, which is either number 1 or number 2, is Calvin and Hobbes. It's on that bookshelf over there. Um, and that is how I learned to read. So, uh, you know,
I love how much you hype this game up. I got to try it at some
I
point.
you really do. I try not to oversell it, because I don't want people to be underwhelmed when they hear me say, "This changed my perspective on life and death." Um,
Not to
but
oversell
I
it.
try not to oversell it, but these are all true statements that I'm making. Um, anyways, that is a game where I went in with 0 foreknowledge. My friend who bought me the game said, "Make sure you don't look up anything online because it's too easy to spoil." So I tell that to people as well. Um, anyway, that's all to say that going in with fresh eyes, just like a babe in the woods, is is really challenging and can be frustrating. But there's so much reward in that frustration. It feels more earned when you finally do reach those heights and beat the villain or finish the game. That I place a lot more value on these days after having that experience.
I think I place a lot more value on it now than I used to as well. Not because I had a life changing experience, just that taught me the meaning of life through a game like you did. But looking back on my childhood playing like the one that comes to mind is SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom.
Okay.
That game was one of my favorite games of all time. Very formative for
Hmm.
me. I'd say comparable to Outer Wilds for you.
All right.
But
Okay.
no, I don't know. It's just a really solid game. But I was just like a little kid playing through it, no internet access at that point, and I just had to figure
Yeah.
everything out. And it
Right.
was a really rewarding beating that game and going through it without just looking up how to do it online. Which,
Yeah.
yeah, 'cause that's another thing about deck building. I didn't look up any decks online to learn how to deck build for this game,
Hmm.
and I felt
Hmm.
like that was actually really formative for me because I don't I want to make a video about this separately, but I hear all the time of like go on a Marvel card database, copy a deck, and then maybe change a few cards. But then I'm like, if I
Hmm.
had done that, I would have got as good at deck building as I am. Because I went straight from the
Yeah.
core box to Adam Warlock was my second hero that I started deck building for, and he has all four aspects in his deck all at once. So it's
Yeah.
like I made some horrible decks at the beginning, but then eventually I made a deck good enough to beat that campaign with just the core box and the Mad Titan's Shadow and the Doctor Strange pack. That's my
Yeah.
entire collection of cards, and then it was really fun, like going through that experience. So I think you're totally right. That and yeah, and the next box that comes out is the Agents of Shield, and it would be great to go through
Mm.
it in 3 player with you and Paulina and have no idea what what the villains are going to be. There's
Yeah.
also a mystery component to it. It looks like there's a traitor in Shield, and we'll have to try
Ooh.
to figure out who it is, who's the
Oh, I love
traitor.
that.
So I feel like the second it, I don't know how they're going to do that, but it's very
Yeah.
possible that the second playthrough won't be nearly as good.
Sure.
Because if we
Sure.
already know who the traitor is, I don't know if it'll change every time or how that will work. But yeah,
Yeah.
figuring that out for blind would be really fun.
Hopefully it is modular because, boy, yeah, I think I've only gone through a couple of these campaigns just once so far, but um, replayability is a question that comes up with a lot of games, and
Yeah,
I think this one, um, I'm not playing every day, but it certainly is rewarding on replays and being able to tweak a deck, overcome that challenge and just get better at deck building, which th- thankfully thankfully I had you and Paulina to lean on so much in the start. But now that I'm building my own decks and finding what works and what doesn't,
yeah.
um,
I didn't tell you anything really for the last few decks you built.
right. But then the X23 deck that I built for that campaign was the probably the most fun feeling deck that I've built so far. So um, it's it's been really rewarding to be able to stand on my own with that.
Yeah, and then I guess it feels like that's just makes me want to move on to the next campaign. So we'll
Hmm.
do that in a second. But I guess the one thing that we could dive into a little more that you mentioned was the ability to like craft like unique experiences in the game. And
Yeah.
I feel like Marvel Champions is great at that. But I really, really enjoyed just like having the ability to just mess around with some pre-made sets and then
Hmm.
recreate that episode of the TV show. And the scenario is actually, well, I don't know. I thought it was really fun. What'd you think of it? Because you were not you weren't completely green at this point. What do you
Yeah.
think of the Mysterio with the fantasy modular and all that stuff?
First of all, fantasy modular, big fan. I I'm a huge like fantasy geek. So being able to fight a dragon in this game is always going to be a big plus.
Yeah,
Um, I I don't remember all of Mysterio's mechanics, but he has those illusion cards that are coming out, and Well, yeah, it's I was still learning his mechanics and not totally being able to, immerse myself in the quote unquote story that was being told in a way,
Yeah,
Um,
Mysterio's not
but
a beginner friendly scenario.
no, I would say probably not. Um, but I think if I were to face him again, I would enjoy that a little bit more. Um, but I do, yeah, I do credit you for just having a harebrained idea a little bit
Yeah,
and saying, "Oh, we should just uh, make this an episode of a TV show," which sounds very fun. I don't know. I think storytelling is like pretty integral to the human condition. So
yeah, the
uh,
human condition. It's getting
that's a very high
philosophical from
flown
here,
statement. But
just like Outer
no,
Wilds.
yeah, no,
No, I
it's
like it. This is Daring Lime content that I haven't had before. The people need to know about the human condition and how Outer Wilds mimics the life and death experience of of the human condition and what it means to be
well,
mortal.
it certainly does, and I will not say
Spoil
anything
it, yeah.
more about it than that because spoilers. But no, I mean, even with this game, there's means of immersing yourself, and uh, this again kind of ties into the idea, which we have a little visual on the last slide to talk about, but just the way that the mechanics of the game can reflect the superpowers of the heroes and the lore that is tied it into the game mechanics, I think is just great.
Yeah, I
Um,
totally agree.
the way that like, okay, maybe I was underwhelmed with Thor, but I think it's really cool that his hammer throw event um, deals 8 damage and then it returns Mjolnir to your hand. I'm like, oh, just like when Thor throws his hammer and Mjolnir returns to his hand. Just
Yeah,
little ways that they they can capture these fun, larger than life characters, um, and make it feel a little bit more um, just immersive. I guess to quote Donkey quoting IGN, this game really makes you feel like Spider-Man.
yeah, yeah. I really do feel like Spider-Man when I play Peter Parker. I love that.
Yeah, yeah. So I think yeah, there's a lot of reward with that, and so I like your scenarios that you're devising with a bit extra on top of what's written on the cards
Yeah,
to make it feel a little bit more story-like.
I do too. And I think this is a good point to talk about Next Evolution. Your very
Hmm.
first campaign box.
Yeah, and a very rewarding one too. I enjoyed this the whole way through.
Yeah, I did too. Yeah, that I guess we can talk about the elephant in the room a little bit. I'm just looking at that
Yeah.
Morlock with the sad face.
Yep. Yep.
So
Yep.
to
Yep.
add context to that, if you saw my underrated cards video I made about Pete Wisdom, that
Mhm.
video spawned from this playthrough of Next Evolution. So I was playing Psylocke with the Uncanny X Force um, support card, and then like Pete Wisdom and Cable and Caliban, a couple other allies like that. And it was so ridiculously strong through the whole campaign. And then in the very first scenario where you get those Morlocks, there was this really funny thing that happened where we're supposed to protect the Morlocks. And that's the whole point of the scenario. But I just immediately sacrificed my Morlock because it was turning off my Uncanny X Force synergy. So we were just talking about how great it is to immerse yourself in the
Yeah.
game and really put yourself in the situation. And Psylocke was just not having it with these little Morlocks. Yeah, I just thought that was really funny. Just Just be like, guys, I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
gotta do it. This Morlock is turning off my uncanny X-Men. He's gotta go.
It was a worthy sacrifice because for my part, a lot of that campaign was just marked by just sitting in awe of that deck and watching you thwart like 30 in one turn. And on like turn one, I'm pretty sure in the final scenario against Strife, I want to say you thwarted at least one, maybe close to 30.
I think it was more than 30. I
Oh,
mean,
it
we
might
could
have been.
check it, but because his side scheme scales per player, so there's
Yep.
like I don't remember off the top of my head, but I think there's like roughly 10 per player or something, plus all
Yep.
the additional that comes on, and I finished it in one turn. I don't know. Do you want to?
I mean,
Yeah,
you had Hope Summers and you had 3 Psychic Kickers in that deck. I think you also got maybe, like, Cable Out or, like, Avengers Mansion or something. It was disgusting to watch. It was like I don't know, like, I'm not a skateboarder, but watching, like, Milton Martinez kickflip, the the car wash, like, I'm never gonna be able to do this, but, oh my god, am I so glad that I'm witnessing someone else do it. You know?
do you wanna check? Because if I Google it, it will. Wait, no, I have my cards next to me. What am I
Oh.
talking about? This is exactly what I was talking about. How we need to stop looking up things on the internet. Yeah, you can just keep talking for a second about how amazing that Psylocke deck was,
Alright,
and I'll look up Strife's side scheme and
alright.
I'll figure out the bare minimum that I thwarted.
Okay, you had Cable in that deck. You had Pete Wisdom, you had Caliban, Uncanny X-Men made Psylocke and yeah, Psylocke was Psylocke? Oh, no, Uncanny X-Force, I should say. Yeah, she was already X-Force. Um, you had those Psychic Kickers thanks to the Mystic trait, which did so much heavy lifting. I think you also had, like a suit up or some upgrade attached to Cable, which he just stuck around. I
Yeah,
don't know if I ever remember seeing him being discarded, except on the final push or something.
yeah, he just
Um,
he just hung out because the uncanny X
yeah,
force reducing the consequential, and then me getting to draw a card every time he finished a side scheme, which was like every turn or sometimes multiple in
yeah,
one turn. But I found Living
yeah.
Bomb, Johnny.
Okay.
It is 3 wait, no, sorry. Strife's Grasp. It starts with 4, plus it hinders 6 per player. So that's 18 plus 4. So it's already
Mhm.
22 before campaign setup. And
Yep.
then campaign setup added a bunch, but I thwarted it because remember I chose not to actually like go all the way because I finished the side scheme as well as getting leaving that at 1
Yeah.
on purpose for the rest of
Yes.
that. So I
Right.
do think it was about 30 in one turn.
Oh, boy. Yeah. There was something oh, yeah, I was also gonna say, I was playing Protection Wolverine, and I decided to add a card to my deck that I think it's, an attachment or something that attaches to a side scheme, and every time a hero defends and takes 0 damage, um, 1 threat is removed from that side scheme. uh, which to me sounded great because I was looking at Paulina playing Shadowcat, and I thought, oh, when she's phased or whatever, she'll take 0 damage when she defends. So this works great. But then it just became a completely dead card because Psylocke and Cable and everyone were just handling the side schemes with so much aplomb that I don't think I ever played it, or it was. I don't think it ever removed a single threat. So
Yeah. And then also the crazy thing about that deck too was do you remember like the second scenario or something where I I was thwarting like 20 all the time. There was never a side scheme that dealt that we had to deal with. And I was finishing a
yeah.
player side scheme like every turn, and then
Hmm.
also keeping the main scheme in check at the same time. And
Yeah.
then immediately I switched to like, okay, I'm gonna do damage now. It was like over 40 damage in one turn.
That's just I mean, there's nothing else you can say. I think you're a genius at this game.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
This
crazy.
was also this was the campaign where we misread the first scenario, so we had to replay the first
Yeah,
scenario because
because
we
we
forgot
forgot about
about
the
that retaliate.
retaliate.
Yeah. That I mean, I ended up liking that mechanic, um, the second time when we played it properly because it felt higher stakes. And we were also playing on expert mode, which means that our heroes were gonna carry our, existing hit points into the next scenario. So we were all, like, pretty concerned about staying at, uh, starting health or near starting health.
Hmm.
Um So it took a little bit of, puzzling together, but, um, it was a lot more fun and rewarding when we were playing with Retaliate 2 on the final villain
Yeah, that was
yeah,
crazy. Okay,
but
I think we've hyped up Psylocke enough.
yeah.
What do you think of the box as a whole?
Okay, yeah, this first campaign or this first scenario rather,
Yeah,
um, it was, uh, it was cool. I remember seeing Harpoon come out as the first villain and you just going, "Oh, no, that's the worst one."
yeah, it's
And
Harpoon and
immediately
Greycrow are the hardest ones to deal with, I think.
yeah. But I really enjoyed the mechanic of that, each of us is having to deal with our own, marauder to start with. Um, they felt threatening. Each definitely felt very threatening. So, um, I I felt like it was, diving into campaign, um, in the right I don't know, for me, it felt, uh very challenging, but not undoable. And
It
we
probably
we
would have been
also
a lot harder without Psylocke.
oh, without question, yeah, without question. Um, it was also, you know, we were starting on expert mode, just because I felt like I could handle it. And it was pretty. It was yeah. I mean, it was kind of brutal. I shouldn't say brutal, but it felt so intimidating just from the jump.
Yeah,
But I enjoy that. I enjoy that in a game. Um, I don't remember the second scenario. I don't remember a lot of the specifics of it.
so the first one was all the Marauders, where we had to
Right.
rescue the Morlocks, and then
Yep.
we kind of like fend them off, right? And then the next one, it's the same villains, but instead we're trying to rescue Hope.
Hope. Okay. Yep. Yeah. 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 Um, oh yeah, and also the mechanic of this campaign of adding in
Yeah, those like
um,
the player side
environment
schemes,
setups. Right. Yeah, and once you beat that, you get the
which
reward
worked
on
really well for
starting
my
every
Uncanny X-Force side scheme finishing deck.
exactly, exactly. Yeah. Um, so that was how we were able to get such great setup turn 1 of the Strife scenario. It's because, yeah, you were able to get out Uncanny X-Force and everything like that for free. Um, that was really nice too. We later played the Red Skull campaign, and you could tell that in the time between releasing Red Skull and releasing Next Evolution, they had put a little more thought into the some of the overarching campaign mechanics because this felt um, all, very rewarding and always worthwhile to go and finish that player side scheme.
Yeah,
Um, yeah.
the
We got
Reds.
to Juggernaut go ahead.
I was gonna say the Red Skull campaign was actually an afterthought, from what I've heard from the interviews with the designers. They
Hmm,
originally because they came from Lord of the Rings to this, and then they wanted
yeah.
this to be like a standalone thing where you just pull things out, you play for like 20, 30 minutes, and then it's over. So it's like they said they wanted to
Yeah.
have like an arcade feel to it, but then Fantasy Flight
Oh.
was like, why would you not do a campaign? So they were forced to
Sure,
do the Red
sure.
Skull campaign. Like, so it was not originally intended to be a campaign. which might be part of what you're
That's
feeling.
interesting. Yeah. Yeah, maybe. And I'm sure we're listening to a lot of player feedback and finding out what works, what doesn't. And,
Yeah.
um, yeah, all that's to say that this campaign mechanic of finishing the side schemes so that you can set up with allies and upgrades to start later on, it feels really good.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree. I like this campaign a lot.
Juggernaut, I think, was uh, intimidating. Um, I I had seen you facing Juggernaut. I think you were playing Jubilee on stream or something, and we're losing to Juggernaut,
Oh, I
and
lost to Juggernaut with
that was
Angel on stream.
oh, okay.
I think it was Angel.
Um,
Jubilee's never lost.
oh,
That's not true.
well, la di da.
But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I haven't. I don't remember playing Jubilee against Juggernaut. And to clarify my
Mhm.
last statement, I have lost with Jubilee. It's true.
Okay,
I have
all
lost,
right. We're all human.
except for Psylocke.
Um, I guess.
Psylocke is too powerful.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, Juggernaut. I think we made it a high priority to keep his helmet off the whole time. Um,
Yeah, it's really hard if you
or
don't.
I don't think we explicitly talked about that from the outset, but I think it we could all just see it was pretty evident. You know, this is going to be a pretty key piece of the
Oh, I
puzzle
forgot
if we
the
don't
other
take care
part
of
about
this.
Psylocke being so OP. Um,
Hmm.
you know how her resource generators let you spend different resource types, like her weapons.
Yeah.
So she can just spend the resources necessary to flip Juggernaut every turn, regardless of what's in her hand.
Oh,
That was
yeah.
partly why it was so easy to keep him on the other side.
Right.
And the main
So
scheme finishing is like another way that he puts his helmet back on and attacks you.
right.
But since threat wasn't an issue because of Psylocke, it was just, and it was still hard. It was still scary despite all that.
It was. Yeah. I was still intimidated, but I was actually more intimidated by Mr. Sinister. I was looking through all his upgrades and attachments and um, seeing just a lot of red flags and going that actually I think it was those were cards that I looked at before we started the encounter.
Yeah,
But I mean, we had already built our decks and we were playing expert where we weren't allowing ourselves to edit our decks between scenarios. So it wasn't like I was building my deck to counteract um, Mr. Sinister's plethora of scary attachments.
yeah, his
But that
attachments
I
are very
remember,
scary.
yeah, I remember being a lot more concerned going into that one, and uh, but we got through it. I think we ended at max health, so that's
Yeah,
kind of all that mattered for us.
yeah. That the
And then
one. That was the one with all the. I'm trying to remember. There was one where we got like a bunch of minions out, and like the campaign specific minions were kind of flooding us in one of them, and I can't remember if that was Juggernaut or Sinister.
ooh, I don't know. What are the campaign specific
It was like
minions?
that one that attaches to your al. Was it? Does it attach to your al? I can't remember exactly.
Oh. Yes.
It's like Phantom
Oh
or
boy, what's her
something.
name? Yeah, but she's only got like one health, and as soon as you kill her, or maybe it's not one health. She has one attack. Um, and as soon as you kill her, she takes over your one of your allies, right?
Yeah, something. It was something like that. That was so we had to just sit there with the minion the whole time. There was another
Right.
campaign specific minion that came out, and also just a couple other minions in general. So I remember with that one,
Yeah.
we were like flooded at different parts.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
that one always that particular minion, it always seemed worth it just to take 1 damage and not worry
especially
about,
as Wolverine.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the
But then we
final
got to Strife.
boss was I don't know. What did you think of
I don't
Strife?
know. I just kicked my feet up and I watched Psylocke do work. Hope Summers also could thwart that side scheme, and so I think you were psychic kicking her as well. And
Yeah.
obviously she's not taking consequential, so it was a perfect storm.
Yeah. It's, it was crazy.
Yeah,
It's
but
so ridiculous when playing Psylocke with Hope, and then you can choose whether Hope has 3 base attack or 3 thwart because she copies your stats. It's so
yeah.
crazy.
So for that particular reason, I Strife is not as memorable to me. I do like his little mechanic of adding um, damage or threat based on uh, or it's just damage, I guess. But some of his deck adds threat based on the number of cards of a certain type in your hand.
Yeah,
I
he
I, I like that. I
discourages
like.
like
Um,
ally spam or event spam or whatever it is that you're doing,
mm, hmm
and
Yeah,
makes things
you
cost
try to get.
more, but gives you the extra card. Yeah, it is.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never been able to figure out how I feel about Strife because the first times that I played Strife, it was on standard, and then I felt like his
hmm
mechanic wasn't that challenging for a final boss. And then this time I
Yeah.
played it, it was just like, okay, that was supposed to be hard having 30 threat on a crisis icon side scheme, but
Right.
it just was all gone on turn one. So, yeah, I don't know. The Strife just was a vessel for Psylocke to pop off in
Yeah,
our
pretty
playthrough at
much.
least.
Yeah. So, I mean, and all of my experience with this campaign is colored through that lens. But it was still overall very enjoyable, and I think it felt like I think there was only one scenario where one of us ended below our starting health,
Yeah,
because we were all yeah, it was good that we were all just communicating and saying, like on our final push, we were saying, "Well, you should delay that action so I can request that action on my turn because I want to recover first, and make sure that uh, we're looking good that way." So, um, yeah, it all worked out. Um, but each of these, aside from Strife, felt intimidating or rewarding in their own way.
yeah, except for the final boss, of course.
But that's an outlier for sure.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. That seems like we covered it pretty well. I think we can
Yeah.
move on to Rise of Red Skull.
Mm.
And in this one, I was Adam Warlock, playing all the aspects, obviously. And Black Panther was Paulina was playing a Justice Black Panther deck, and then this was you built your own Wolverine deck, right? And then this was your second deck in a row that you built without really any input from me.
Yeah. I probably had a couple of questions, but yeah, all the heavy lifting was me. Um, so going from Wolverine to X-23, it felt like a logical progression because I was remarking that I like mechanics where your hero can ready up after they've exhausted. It just feels like that action economy is pretty valuable, and I will I enjoy like doing a little maybe a little chip damage, um, working on thwarting for one of those actions and attacking for another of those actions. Just that ability to split up your output feels really valuable to me. And so you said, "Well, I've got the perfect hero for you then."
Yeah,
Then it's kind of Wolverine with that added.
yeah, because
Um,
you had what was it? You had repurpose in your Wolverine deck to like uh
yes.
get your energy barriers out of the way so you could ready up, and you like
hmm
really enjoyed that part, right?
Yeah.
It's like what if you
Yeah.
did
That was
that
that
but
was
like
that
way
was
harder?
exactly it. Yeah. So I came into X-23 um, putting a lot of value on that. And boy, was she fun. Wolverine and X-23 are a couple of my favorites for sure. I was counting before this, and I've played a dozen different heroes, and both of them are definitely in my top. I'll say top four.
Yeah, I think they're both
Um,
great. I I haven't played either of them that much.
mhm,
Wolverine, I haven't played him as much, mostly just because Paulina really, really likes Wolverine, so she's playing Wolverine most of the
sure.
time. And then
Yeah.
X-23, funny enough, I don't really enjoy writing mechanics that much,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is
We talked about
funny.
that.
But not in all cases, which is
Okay.
weird to me because for some reason I really, really enjoyed playing Rogue Aggression, bumping up my base attack, and then readying Rogue with her energy was it energy transfer ability? I really
Okay.
enjoyed that. But then for some reason, when it's just like printed on the hero's text box, I I don't enjoy it. Like I don't
Mm,
really enjoy X-23 or Quicksilver, which is like one of my one of my most controversial takes about this game, I think, because most people really
mhm,
enjoy Reading and really enjoy uh X-23 and Quicksilver.
sure. Yeah. I was just gonna say something. Uh, well, yeah. I think being able to build from Wolverine, where I realized health is money, and going to X-23, where I realized, yeah, health is money, and I like ready.
Yeah.
It felt like a great progression where this is where I feel like I'm really hitting my stride with this game, and it was also, as you mentioned, kind of these are the first couple decks that I really was building on my own.
Hmm.
Um, and this X-23 deck, I think I said earlier, is my favorite deck that I've built so far because I was playing aggression, um, and I decided I want to be the guy who's like murking minions. So I put Angela in there. I put the Hall of Heroes location in there. Um, I had Looking for Trouble. I had um, some, a couple other minion-oriented aggression events in there. So um, it felt like I was firing on all cylinders with being able to like plan that out, and it ended up feeling really rewarding. So,
Yeah, you did a great job with that deck.
well, thank you.
It was also really rewarding for me uh, introducing you to the game and then watching you just need less and less input to where now I don't
Sure.
think you need any input from me to like make
Yeah.
make cool decks, which is really fun for me.
Yeah. And we're still obviously talking about it when I am picking out cards and things like that. But um, that has always been a deterrent for me away from deck builders. Is that there's just so much out there that I suffer that analysis paralysis. So having a resource like you and Paulina and your channel has been
And you got my
really
binders.
helpful. Yeah, and I have your organization to rely on as well. Um, Also, the Marvel card database. I'm starting to use that more often,
Yeah, that's a
and
really useful tool that doesn't require spending hours organizing your cards.
exactly, yeah.
'Cause, like
I
using
mean,
those
I think
filter commands are really nice, and like the text
yes,
search stuff where you can like search like minion in the description and then find everything related to
hmm,
minions. It's really useful.
right, yeah. I had oh, what was I just about to say? Uh, I'll think of it. I'll think of it later. But let's talk about Red Skull, I guess.
Oh, one thing I
Oh,
just noticed
I know what
was,
I was about.
oh no, you can go first.
Okay, I was just gonna say that really the only deck builder I properly played before this was Yu-Gi-Oh! When I was, like, 10 years old,
Yeah,
and I played it in high school. I just brought out my old decks, and my friend Zach and I would play at lunch, And as soon as Zach started investing in new card packs with different, like XYZ mechanics and stuff like that that I didn't know anything about, that was where I said, you know what? I don't care enough to spend money on this. So you're going to be winning these games from here on out.
Yeah.
So we started playing Uno instead at lunch, and that was fun. But yeah, that has always been a deterrent for me. Is just again that analysis paralysis. Just there being so much meta out there that people have talked about for years. Um, I think um, I am actually finding that I really do enjoy deck building, and I just had to get over that initial energy activation barrier, and now this exothermic reaction is proceeding
Yeah.
where
Bringing in the thermo.
the, yeah. I'm in a more content energy state. This analogy is being stretched to its limits, but um, yeah.
Yeah. I I also started with Yu-Gi-Oh as a child. I had a handful, not a handful. I had like 400 or 500 cards probably, somewhere in there.
Hmm.
And then the way I was deck building Yu-Gi-Oh decks, I guess, as of like a 4-year old going on. They weren't like that intricate, obviously. But if I ever wanted to
Yeah.
play with like my parents or a friend, I would have to build a deck for each of us that I thought was like,
Hmm.
oh, this will work. And like
Yeah.
I put a degree of thought into it. Not that it was a lot,
Right.
but that was really fun for me. Another mode that I used to play with my friends was we would just um take all of my cards, no sleeves by the way, throw them on the ground face down, and then just like rub the hands over them like this to shuffle all of them. So just like grinding
Yeah.
them into the ground and then bending them, all that stuff. And then once
Oh
they're
Lord.
adequately shuffled, we just take turns just picking one off the ground, and then that went into our deck, and then we just played. And
Yeah.
that was really fun. But then
That's one
similar
way to
to
do it.
you, I didn't like stop playing once the other mechanics came out, but I was playing like the Yu-Gi-Oh video games every once in a while, which was
Mm.
often like not PvP. And yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
have that many people to play with when I got older. But then it's funny that every single person that quit Yu-Gi-Oh has some story similar to you. It's like, yeah, once they introduced Xyz summoning, I was just like, yep, that's it for me. Then after that it was like, yeah, once they introduced synchro summoning, I just couldn't do it anymore. Like what, you just get to
Yeah.
bring in this card just by combining the two from your deck, and that overpowered. With Xyz summoning, you have to have the same star levels. And then the synchro people were like, yeah, once Link summoning came out, I just couldn't do it anymore. So
Yeah.
it's funny that all that was coming out. But yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh's not as good
Mhm.
as Marvel Champions in my opinion. Wait, the thing I was saying, when I was reading out of Warlock's text box, the leadership
Yep.
ability for Battle Mage was give a hero +1 thwart attack and defense till the end of this round. I was really
Right.
enjoying giving that to you when you could ready that
Yeah.
much. That was so fun.
Mhm. Yeah, that was a nice little synergy there. Um, I think this was also yeah, I think I have a little graphic of a couple cards on the last slide of cards I included in this aggression deck. Um, but I was also picking a couple of my cards just based on artwork that I thought was cool, and um, I was saying, you know what? To hell with optimality. This sounds cool, and Angela's gonna cycle through a lot of the villain deck, and that's not good. And looking for trouble is gonna mill through a lot of the villain deck, and that's not good either. But
Yeah.
they just sound fun and they sound cool, so I'm gonna do it. Um, and I don't know, like maybe it was a little bit of dumb luck, but it ended up working well and felt great. So, you know, that's also how I approach like building D&D characters. Like I like to think about min maxing, but sometimes I'm going I am going to pick this suboptimal warlock boon, for example, or warlock pact. Um, or Warlock Eldritch Invocation. That's the term I was thinking of.
Yeah,
There's
well,
so much to Warlock. Anyway, um, uh, not Adam Warlock, uh, D&D Warlock. Anyways, I like to pick the suboptimal thing once in a while, just because it sounds more interesting and it sounds more fun. Um, and in this instance, it paid off, and we got through this
yeah. I don't think your
without
deck
too
was
much
really
trouble.
that suboptimal either. It was really good. It's just those
No, yeah,
mechanics can be really risky.
yeah,
With like, okay, I give myself a bad thing to do a good thing, but is the good thing you're doing actually better than the bad thing? Which
hmm
in this case, I think it was. But then also one thing that I love about this game is if you're wanting to do that and build like some sort of janky deck that's just really fun and has an interesting goal, you don't
yeah,
have to fight the hardest villains in the game. You can fight
true,
Absorbing Man, or you could
yeah,
fight like I don't know, just someone that doesn't have harder modulars, or or just you could only just play standard instead of expert. Like there's so many ways
hmm
to change the difficulty to match whatever strategy you're doing. I really enjoy that.
yeah. That's very true.
What do you think about I guess the Red Skull villains and the Red Skull campaign?
Hmm. Okay, so Crossbones was the first one. Um, he Crossbones himself didn't feel particularly threatening, but I liked that the weapons he brought out from his weapon deck stayed through the rest of the campaign and became a permanent factor to deal with. That is a fun mechanic.
Yeah.
Um, we got to Absorbing Man. I think the first thing you said to me before we played against him was, "Paulina doesn't respect Absorbing Man," and she said she corroborated that, and I definitely understand that take. He was kind of a nothing villain with not much interesting going on.
Yeah, I he's kind of a sad case for me because I like what they're trying to do with it of like he absorbs these traits and gets different stuff on, but it just doesn't
Yeah.
really work because he almost
hmm
never actually gets the bonus. He almost never has the trait that matches the encounter card he has, which
Yeah.
is kind of sad.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so he's just very. It's not. I don't want to say that the problem is that he's easy. I don't think that's the problem because I think having easy villains is good. I think the problem with him is that
Mm,
he just fails on delivering what his mechanic is supposed to be. And when the villain's just like whiffing what
sure.
they want to do, it's kind of it's kind of lame.
Yeah.
Cuz like
Yeah. I don't have much else to say on him
yeah, cuz he's
besides that. I
literally
think you
just
summed it up.
delaying adding delay counters for Red Skull. So
Right. Yeah.
which that's like how his hero that's I mean, that's how the villain feels. Is that he's just a delay.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, no, I liked
I kind
Taskmaster
of
a lot when we replayed him
breezed
though.
past Crossbones.
Not replayed him. I replayed Taskmaster because I played him
Yeah.
before, and then it's your first time. But I really like
Sure.
Taskmaster.
Yeah. I kind of breezed past Crossbones. I don't know if you had anything to remark on him.
Um, I guess Crossbones is one of the because I jumped into Marvel Champions really late, kind of like you.
hmm
So when I came back to Rise of Red Skull, it
hmm
was actually the last campaign box I bought, which is kind of funny.
Oh,
But
okay. Yeah.
Crossbones, when I played him, I was like, meh, he's fine. He's not
Yeah.
not my favorite villain. But then when I look at the people's channels that have had um, Crossbone have had Marvel Champions since the beginning, they love
hmm
Crossbones, which is really interesting to
Okay.
me. Like he's consist. I consistently hear people saying Crossbones is like one of their favorite villains, and then
Mm.
I don't know. I kind of get it now because I really enjoyed it when we played him, and his
Yeah.
the scary thing he does is that like what was it called, the full auto card, where you take
Oh, yeah.
damage equal to like the boost cards that you boost icons that you discard off. that card is really
Mm,
scary. So like I don't know, it's not like the most like interesting thing to me, but it is really
mhm.
um it's fun when I'm playing Crossbones and I'm like, when is full auto gonna come out? Like, do I have to?
Yeah,
Am I just gonna die this turn because I'm not ready for it? It's
yeah.
like that part's kind of fun to me, and I do enjoy his weapons. He's much scarier on expert mode than he is in standard from my experience with him. But still, he just has
Sure.
so little health because he has like you can see he has 16 health on side 3, so not that much. So
Mhm.
like in solo, you just burst him down. So I think that
Yeah,
he is better at higher player counts, is my opinion. So when we played him at 3 player, I enjoyed it a lot.
sure.
But I enjoyed
Yeah.
Taskmaster a lot more. And then it was
Yeah.
Taskmaster. It was really like Taskmaster was hard to deal with because unlike Absorbing Man, every turn his mechanic goes off. You're having to deal with taking damage
Mhm.
like every turn from Taskmaster, and then if you flip down to heal that damage, you're gonna take more damage when you flip back up. It's like he
Yep.
feels threatening because of that. And then in our playthrough, we got Madam Hydra like 4 or 5 times. It was
Yeah.
it was a lot.
She was omnipresent. Yeah.
Yeah, which I hadn't had that experience with Madam Hydra before. And I'm pretty sure Legions of Hydra is actually a modular set that isn't recommended. It's not one of the recommended ones, but there's 2 modular sets that come
Oh,
in the core
okay.
box. One of them is this Legions of Hydra one, and the other one is Modoc. So I thought it was really
Mhm.
cool that they used um, the Legions of Hydra set with Taskmaster. I really enjoyed that
Yeah.
because I should have explored the core box more when I first got it. But yeah, it was super cool seeing Legions of Hydra do its thing and have to deal with
Mhm.
the side scheme searching for her, and then her not being able to take damage while it's out, and then after she schemes her attacks, you have to place 2 threat on the side scheme, and it has a hazard. It's like it's a fun interaction. It's also really hard though.
Yeah. Yeah. It was considerable, but um I don't know. The standout for me in this campaign was Zola, and the the prisoner camp aspect of it. That was him, right?
Yeah, he's
Where you have
got
to
Moon
torture
Knight.
him.
Wait, no.
Yeah.
The prisoner thing I think is Taskmaster.
Oh wait.
Let me
Okay.
check.
I was okay. Maybe
Wait, sorry,
it was
no.
the
I was forgetting. There, it's kind of both. So if I'm remembering right, yeah, Taskmaster has these minions like White Tiger, Electro, Shang-Chi, and Moon Knight that you rescue
right
from Taskmaster,
allies.
but then and then they become like part of your deck after that
Yes.
in the
Okay.
campaign. But then and then Zola is the one that takes your signature ally away from you.
Right. Right. Okay. That's it. That's it. So I mean, I like it. I loved that campaign mechanic of being able to rescue those heroes for hire and incorporate them into our decks. I think I got one and Polina got two, and I don't think you
I
got
didn't
any.
get one, man.
But um, it just worked out that way. But
Well, I was
that
busy just
felt
playing all my
great.
upgrades while you guys dealt with stuff.
Yeah. Um, that felt great. And every time I drew Shang-Chi into my hand after that, he was always a welcome sight.
Yeah.
Um,
Zero cost
just a
allies
really
with good abilities are and good stats are really solid.
oh yeah, yeah. I learned after we rescued them that the one we didn't get to was Moon Knight, so I was kinda ticked about that.
Yeah.
But
Maybe we'll
not really
replay
ticked, but I was like,
Taskmaster
"Yeah, we
and
certainly
you can
could."
get the Moon Knight ally. We could, I don't know,
Yeah.
modify the rules a little bit and like choose instead of getting a random one, you could get Moon Knight. I think that would be fun.
I think I'm at the point where I kinda wanna try my hand at designing my own Moon Knight hero deck.
Yeah?
I I don't know. I've been thinking about it, and I don't know.
So
I got time on my hands.
you're like, I hate deck builders. I can't do it. They're not fun. Yu-Gi-Oh's bad. You jump into this and you're like, you know what? Deck building's okay. And then like 10 decks in, you're
Yeah,
like, I'm ready to design a new hero from the ground up.
this is probably the Dunning-Kruger effect, and me just talking out of the side of my neck and having no idea how much thought it would take. But
I think you could
no,
do
I
it.
mean, I love the guy, and it's certainly not gonna be pretty. Um, I also had a thought for the other night. I was like, I wish J. Jonah Jameson were a villain that you could face as Spider-Man.
Oh,
um,
he's not a villain,
but
but I won't spoil it too hard. But
okay,
J. Jonah
okay.
Jameson is very present in the Sinister Motive campaign that we're gonna do.
Ah, okay,
I don't
okay.
want to say more
All
than
right, I'm
that
looking
because I
forward
want
to
you to
that.
just experience it when you get back from Wisconsin. But yeah,
Yeah. I just think it'd be funny to make him a villain and give him cards like, his main scheme is just getting pictures of Spider-Man. So, like, every time Spider-Man is flipped, you have to, like,
it'd be fun.
add a
It's like,
photograph counter to the scheme or something.
oh, I just had such a good idea. Imagine this:
Mm,
Spider-Man is an ally that's in a separate play area that's not in play in our scenario. And then Spider-Man has to fight off all
yeah,
these like common criminals and like rescue rescue cats from trees and stop children from getting hit by cars, all that stuff that he does as a friendly neighborhood
yeah.
Spider-Man over there. But he has health and the villains chip away, or the minions that come into play over there like chip away at his health. And then if
Mhm.
and then like J. Jonah Jameson is the villain we're fighting and he's spewing all this negative stuff about Spider-Man, and then we have to keep
Yeah.
J. Jonah Jameson in check because he makes Spider Man's thing harder over there that we can't help Spider Man with. I would love that.
Oh, man. We're cooking with peanut oil.
Okay, so we get so you
I don't know if you
design
know what that means. It just means we're having good ideas.
so you design Moon Knight. I design J. Jonah Jameson,
Yeah.
and then we just come together.
Okay.
That could be fun.
Um, yeah. Okay, Zola. Yeah, that was fun, and so X-23's signature ally is Honey Badger. She she she's quite a good signature ally, but I think I left her in prison for a while because it didn't feel critical to my play.
That reminds me of when you were talking about what was it like whatever card it is in her deck that lets you grab Honey Badger. And you're like, this is like the worst
Yeah.
card in her deck. And I'm like, are you sure about that? Then it came
I
up, you're
you
like,
know,
man, I wish I had that card right now. And I'm like,
yeah, first or second scenario, I was like, "Well, this is a dead weight card," and then the third or fourth scenario, both of those times, is like, "That would be perfect in my hand right now, or,
yeah,
to have played it right now." But ah, well.
that was
Yeah,
funny.
I undervalued that sisterhood card at first. I think it was sisterhood. Um, but yeah, who's Adam Warlock's signature ally?
Pip the Troll.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You don't
yeah.
remember him?
I think you rescued him.
Oh,
He had
he's the one
what?
that I played from my hand a couple times to give to someone else, and then he
Right.
has a tough status card, so he blocks.
Yeah,
He's all right.
yeah.
He's pretty
That
cool, but
that's
he's
neat.
not. Because the thing about Pip is when you play him from using his ability, it's not really any different than if you had just played him the turn before. So it's like
Mhm.
it's a little lackluster in that sense of it feels like his ability
Sure.
is really cool, but kind of unimpactful.
Mhm,
But yeah, that's
mhm.
probably why you don't
But
remember him because he just like died every time. So he just jump blocked a
but
couple
with
times.
that card ability, he can become someone else's ally though,
Yeah,
which is yeah, it feels yeah, that's a nice little failsafe. Um, but I think and I am pretty certain that Paulina rescued Shuri as Black Panther. But I don't think I rescued Honey Badger.
Well, they're
I
all
was doing
rescuing all
decent
the
enough
allies is
output that
linked
it.
up. We don't do it separate.
Oh, oh, okay, yeah, and then it must have been that I just like didn't draw into her for the rest of the game because I don't remember her
Yeah.
coming out. Um, but I was doing decent enough output that I was not making rescue a priority.
Yeah. You could try leadership builds for X-23 centered around Honey Badger with like sidekick and stuff is really, really, really powerful if you
Yeah,
want to try that.
yeah, I remember you saying that, and yeah, it's definitely worth a shot. But I don't know. I have so many other heroes
Yeah,
that I
you're
want
on the
to
you're building
dip
the
my toes
ham deck
into.
right now.
Hmm.
I'm
Yeah,
excited to see how
boy,
that
Spider
goes.
Ham is so fun.
And did you like Red
Yeah.
Skull as like a final boss?
Um, he was a considerable threat. Yeah. Um, and you're correct that absorbing man's only purpose it felt was just to put some delay counters on the Red Skull scenario. Um, but yeah, it ended up being um, pretty good. I'm trying to remember specifics of that game. I think that was like near the end of it is I had one really great turn where I did maybe a little bit of thwart, but I think I did like 25 damage because I was able to ready up a couple times. I also had that um, what is it, the blaster weapon, uh,
Hand cannon?
hand cannon. Thank you. As well as I had a yeah, it's a zero cost event.
Mean
Mean
swing?
swing. I think yeah. Um, a couple of things like that in that deck that were working together, and so I think I did yeah something like 25 damage, which felt for me like uh, some of the most output I've done. Where maybe I'm not dealing 40 damage in a turn like Psylocke or
Most people are happy
103.
if they do like 15 in a turn.
Yeah,
Like if someone
and
can play
that's
two
I'm
swing web
certainly in
kicks,
that
they're
camp.
really happy.
Yeah, I'm definitely in that camp, and it felt yeah. I think something we both have said is that X-23. She feels pretty consistent. She
Yeah.
can do some chip damage, ready once or twice, and be able to thwart a little bit as well. Um, yeah, the consistency felt great, but um, maybe there aren't as many knockout moments where you're dealing 30 plus damage, which I'm fine with. I'm certainly happy to have cracked 20. So
That was an interesting thing with me going back to Adam Warlock. Because when I first played
mhm.
Adam Warlock, again, he was like the second hero I started playing a lot. I felt like, wow, he can do so much damage in one turn and so much thwarting in one turn. And
Yeah,
like I was so impressed by Adam Warlock, like once you get your upgrades out and stuff. But
yeah.
then when I was playing him here, I was like, I, I think you remember, I remember you were noting this of like, I was disappointed when I was only doing 20 damage on my final pushes.
Yeah,
It's also fresh off that Psylocke thing too, but that
right.
was a
Yeah.
shock to me coming back to Adam Warlock, who I thought of as like the strongest hero I had at that point.
Hmm.
Like, I mean, it was like him and Doctor Strange, where I was like, this is it. This is like as strong as it gets. Is how I felt about it. And
Mm-hmm.
now I go back to him, I'm like, wow, he's taking forever to set up, and he's doing like
Yeah,
not as much damage as I would like, but I don't think he's bad. Like I do think he's very good, but he's
yeah,
my perception of him has changed a lot coming back to him after all this time. And also just juxtaposing against
yeah.
Psylocke was not. That would have been a letdown for like almost any hero I was playing though.
Hmm. What I'm hearing is that Six can do some wild output, but uh, there's some setup that might be required.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. The only Mystic I've tried is just that one little game of
Scarlet
Scarlet
Witch.
Witch, but mhm. I'd be interested to try more of those cards.
Yeah, mystics are really interesting because a lot of
Mm.
people think of it as like the strongest trait in the game, which I'm not sure I agree with that. Um, but they are very strong because
What
all
would
of
you
the
say?
mystics change something fundamental about the game, which is very powerful.
Yeah.
It's like Doctor Strange has his invocation deck, so he always has access. He basically replaces his basic activation with a very good card, which can be very valuable. And
Mhm.
then Adam Warlock has all four
Mhm.
aspects in his deck, which is very powerful. And then Scarlet Witch like deals with the encounter deck, which is super powerful. And then Magic plays with the top card of her deck face up and can put it into play
Right.
for one reduced cost. It's like they all do something crazy, but
Yeah.
they do something
I
game breaking, but they don't. None of the mystics, as far as I'm aware, really approach that ceiling of like the highest whatever thing you're looking at in the game.
mm,
They
okay.
just are very versatile and they're very good at control in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's move on to the
I,
next thing. I don't remember what it was.
sure.
Oh, yes, yes, Criminal Kingdom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is sort of like a homebrew scenario that I made where you can see it on my website. They're set up for it. But basically, Claw is has all these secret layers that he goes to, and he has a bunch of minions from the different modulars that include like all the criminal vibe minions. So the idea of this scenario is that uh, if you hit Claw too hard, he's gonna get scared and run away like a coward. And if he has a minion in in play at that time, then you discard a new secret lair deck because it represents him like running away, and then um, and then you can't damage him for the rest of the turn because he ran away, so he's not there. So it's like kind of trying to make like a thematic thing of this like criminal network that in aggregate they're very difficult because if like you are fighting a bunch of the criminals at the same time, it can be hard to deal with. But once you get it down to like you take out all of his goons and you just have Claw out, then he doesn't have anyone to protect him anymore, and he's not so scary. So that was the idea of
Yeah.
this scenario.
Yeah. Just a nice little twist, a little additional layer of complexity that, yeah, like we were talking about earlier, can tell a little story, and so that's been really fun delving into those.
Yeah. Oh, I had another idea. Is I had people play test. Some of the people in my Discord offered to play test this scenario and the Rhino one that we did,
Mhm.
and the feedback was that it was too hard. Um,
Okay.
so I was trying to think of ways to fix this because, and then I thought of a really cool way because like basically what happens with Claw is you have to deal with the threat and the minions, and that's like enough to where you never make progress on Claw. So like oftentimes what
Mm.
happens is like minions come out, they have to flip to alter ego because their health, they flip up, then they just have to thwart, and then they get hit again, have to go back to alter ego, and then that was just like it was harder on standard than I was intending it to be.
Yeah.
So my idea was to give each player a copy of Interrogation Room, which is a justice shield
Mm.
support, which I really like. That's on
Yeah.
theme of like Claw has his criminal network and Shield's monitoring that. And
Right.
what it does is every time that you defeat a minion, you get to remove a threat from a scheme. So it's kind of like
Yeah.
on theme, and then and then you get the option of like these minions are trying to protect him, but if you interrogate the minion and learn a little bit about his secret lair, you can kind of thwart his plans a little bit. So I really liked that. So I thought that was a
Mm.
really
Yeah.
fun addition to it to bring the difficulty down a little bit.
Yeah. I seem to remember that we during this game weren't. It took us a while to start to bring down boss. Is that right? Was that this game?
Yeah, you were getting stressed about the deck running out because you kept milling the deck to get more minions.
Yeah,
You're like,
it was
no,
a very
the
thin
deck
deck.
it wasn't thin though, is the thing. When I was going back
Okay.
through Rhino's set, I don't know if you can see it on screen here, but you see this is Rhino's full encounter deck. It's only that thick.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
the recommended. The claw one was much bigger than this. And you're like, that's
Fair
so
enough.
thin. I thought that was so funny. I was like, because like I wasn't sure that you were that wrong about it. But then when I went back and played Ultron and Rhino again from the core box with only one mod, I'm like, no, no, no. That was a pretty thick encounter deck. He was just milling it a lot.
Yeah, and I guess we had just been playing some campaigns with a lot
Yeah,
of
with extra
modulars
cards
mixed
and
in.
stuff too.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think we it took a little while to really start bringing him down because we were um, working on these minions and everything. I was also playing Protection, Peter Parker,
Yeah,
which
which you're not a fan of, right?
yeah, Protection is just a little more. It's a bit of a safer bet, but can lead to some longer games, I suppose.
Yeah.
Um, so,
I think it's really good in multiplayer. Like three
mhm,
player and up, I think protection's very useful because you can protect the like aggression and justice player like that. Like in this scenario, I
yeah,
was aggression, Polina was playing Miss Marvel Justice. But when you're in solo, if you're just blocking and not taking damage, and that's all you did with your turn, then you're not making any progress on
yeah,
the villain or the schemes, which can be hard. So protection is much harder. I think protection is much harder to do in solo because you can't just rely in like lean into defending so
mhm,
much. It's hard to find
yeah,
output in protection.
yeah. This was also my first game as Peter Parker, and I, you know, he's kind of fun. It's kind of fun to play. Luckily, we had a justice player because the my main takeaway from that game was, man, Peter just has no thwart. He has almost nothing in his deck to help mitigate that. So
Yeah,
I
that was
was
like best
a
case
little
scenario
unimpressed with
for
that.
him too, because it was the spider tracers is his only thwart, and there were so many minions
Mhm.
in this, but it was
Yeah.
still like underwhelming on the thwart side.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I that again kind of ties into that idea of I can see how this was one of the first heroes to be designed, and if he had been designed later, they would have shored up that weakness, maybe, probably.
Yeah,
I
another
I don't
thing
know. Who's
about
to
it
say for
though
sure?
is if you look at the first design, if you read
Hmm.
the tutorial book on how to play, it doesn't recommend you play solo. It recommends you to play two player. I don't
Oh, okay.
I don't think that this game was intended to be a solo game at the beginning. Like
That's
if you
interesting.
look at the heroes from the core
Yeah.
box, you'll see more of a stark contrast between the hero's strengths and weaknesses. So
Hmm.
if you look at the core box, you have Spider-Man who doesn't die, has a lot of economy, but can't thwart.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
if you look at Captain Marvel, she is pretty good all around, has a massive economy, but her events do less output than other heroes' events. So like her thwarting card's a 2 cost card that
Okay.
thwarts 2, and then if you have one of her other upgrades out, you get to thwart 2 from a different scheme. And her three
Hmm.
cost attack event lets you draw a card, but it's only 5 damage. Whereas other heroes
Yeah.
do like more damage than that with their attacks. So like that's kind of her weakness is just sometimes having low output but high economy. And then Iron Man has amazing output, but he has to spend like 2 or 3 turns just like
Right.
in alter ego. So if he's in solo, you just lose to the scheme with Iron Man, especially just the
Hmm.
core box. And Black Panther is
Yeah.
like he's kind of I think Black Panther is like debatably the most well-rounded one out of the core box because
Sure.
he does have setup, but he's has a 2/2/2 stat line with 11 health for recovery and retaliate. So he's just kind of
Yeah,
innately strong, and he has a lot of money.
sure.
So yeah, he's kind of the best all arounder. And then She-Hulk, a lot of damage, a lot of health, um, not a lot of money, only for
Yeah.
hand size.
Yeah. Hmm.
And then you look at Miles, like what you played later, or first you played Miles before Spider-Man, and the design
Yep.
is very different at that point. Like almost
Mhm.
every hero that's newer feels like they can kind of do a bit of everything.
Yeah, I would agree, and that probably comes back to listening to the players and, figuring out, yeah, a little bit more complexity is not not always a bad thing, um, but it's really interesting that you say that it probably wasn't designed to be a solo game. I think it's I respect that. Like, I think some of the games that I love, Terraforming Mars has, like, a solo mode. Wingspan, I guess, has a solo mode against the Automa. Um, these are always appreciated solo versions, but, um, yeah, I don't know. I definitely enjoy playing with other people more,
I
uh,
do as well.
pretty much regardless of the game. Um, it's just a matter of, uh, yeah, you're not gonna totally be able to design to please everyone. And if you're designing for a solo mode, I mean, that's, uh, I'm not a game designer, so, I tip my hat to anyone who does, follow that path and has to, like, balance all of these different, um, considerations and aspects, um, to designing the game. I think solo does end up being a pretty common way of playing for a lot of these tabletop games.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, being able to, yeah, putting more thought into that, I guess, is something that I would, if I were to design a game, I would try and, think pretty critically about the solo experience. Um, and with this game, I think it's, I haven't played a whole lot solo, so, you might
yeah.
be able to say better than I how it stacks up. But,
There's distinct things that get easier and harder from solo to
mhm,
multiplayer. So
yeah,
damage becomes like I guess like mid-size damage turns become much more valuable in solo than
mhm,
in multiplayer. Because
yeah,
if you play like an uppercut and basic attack and do like 7 damage or something like that, in solo,
mhm,
that's like over half of some of the villain's health on one side.
yeah.
Whereas in multiplayer, if you do that on the villain, like in the middle of the game or at the beginning, it's like, why are you doing that? You know? Because it's just
Sure.
like if you're spending a whole turn to deal damage to the villain and not improve the board state in multiplayer, then that's generally
Mhm,
not going to be that useful. But in solo, if you do that, you can sort of just like outpace the villain and just try to rush their health down before they rush your health down. Which,
yeah,
so like rush
yeah,
strategies can become very powerful in solo, and it makes aggression much better in solo than it is in multiplayer in a lot of instances.
yeah.
The downside of solo is that um, your hero, if you especially if you don't have a super versatile hero like Psylocke who can choose to have like 3 attack or 3 thwart, then
Mhm,
if your hand, like imagine you're playing Peter Parker in solo, you have a swinging web kick in your hand, and then you get a side scheme that comes out with
yeah,
Crisis. You have to deal with that side scheme, but he has 1 thwart, and then if you don't have your thwarting card in your hand, you're just screwed, and you can just lose to something
yeah,
like that. Or let's say you flip down to alter ego, but to recover once in the game for the very first time, the villain schemes and then
mhm,
gets advanced. You've probably seen that happen to me on stream, and then you just lose
yeah,
in one turn, just like out of the blue.
mhm,
It's like
yep,
solo's very swingy in that way, but
swingy,
also
exactly.
it's a lot easier in some senses too, because you can't just in multi so like three player and up, unless everyone draws the perfect hand, you can't just decide, you know what, let's quit this game and let's just take out the villain, and then we'll just
Hmm.
risk it. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
it's very different.
yeah. And I mean, this game is a little bit swingier in general than other games that I've spent a lot of time playing. Um, there, yeah, I think those two first examples, going back to Wingspan and Terraforming Mars. Those are games where you don't have to discard. Well, you don't have to discard in your hand at the end of your turn in this game either. But you're not drawing 5 new cards a turn in those other games.
Mm-mm.
Um, you're drawing a couple of cards, maybe. Um, you are able to hold on to the ones that you want to keep, and you can think 4 or 5 turns ahead, even like 10 turns ahead, about building up towards this one play. Whereas in Champions, you have to have a little bit more dynamic reaction time, um, based on what's in the encounter deck and based on the next cards that you're drawing. You never know for sure, and you can't think in such long time spans like I'm used to. Um, and I really enjoy that aspect of the challenge, and that's why, for example, in my X-23 aggression deck, um, I put Lie in Wait in there, which deals 3 damage to the next time to a minion the next time it engages you. Um, and so you can like plan ahead a little bit, hedge your bets, prepare for the worst, which makes it feel maybe not quite as swingy. And so, yeah, just a different play style than what I'm typically used to, where I'm thinking, calculating a bunch of moves in advance. Um, but definitely still rewarding for that reason too. Is just a new way of thinking about it and approaching this game.
Yeah, I like that too, because yeah, you can't plan ahead that far because you don't know what the villain's gonna do on the turn. The only thing you know for sure is
Yeah.
gonna happen is the villain's gonna add some threat in the main scheme and then try to activate against you. And then if you want to like
Hmm.
hold on to a card, it's like if you hold on to your card, that's a resource that you could have spent right now. And then is it actually going to be worth it?
Exactly.
Which sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. And like learning that balance is tricky.
Hmm. Yeah.
Some things
Yeah. And
like
I still,
on
I still am definitely, I'm still definitely coming to realize that with these other games, with Wingspan or something like that, and recognizing the value of maximizing this current turn, even if it means sacrificing a good card, um, a relatively good card.
Mhm.
Um, but with this game, yeah, it's a little. Uh, I don't know. I'm willing to be a little bit stingy and hold on to cards that I think are really going to be great next turn, and then sometimes it ends up that I hold on to that card for 3 turns.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm still kind of finding that balance myself.
Yeah, it's really hard to know when to hold on to something when you are playing a hero that you're not that familiar with and a villain you're not that
True.
familiar with. Because
Yeah, true.
like an example that happened on stream yesterday was Rhino. Um, this was really funny. I was counting the cards in my Spider-Man deck, so I knew that I
Mhm.
had 2 backflips in like the bottom 10 cards of my deck,
Yeah.
and then Rhino got this like big overkill charge attack. Oh, let's actually go to the next slide because I think it's this one. Yeah, I was playing this
Yeah.
on stream, and Rhino had like the +2 counters from the sinister minions being defeated, and then
Mhm.
he had charge and his horn. So I was expecting him to do an attack for like 10 or more.
Yeah.
And then I looked at Peter Parker and I could have held on to surveillance team in my hand because I needed thwart a little bit, but
Yeah.
like I knew that there was two swinging web kick or two backflips coming up. So
Yeah.
I pitched my hand, and then backflip was the last card that I drew in my hand. It's like if I hadn't pitched that
Molto
card,
bene.
it would have been I wouldn't have got the backflip. But then yeah,
Right.
that kind of decision was really really fun. And Rhino's a little more obvious when he's gonna charge you with his +3 attack because it's just sitting there on the
Mhm.
table. But that's
Yeah.
something that I'm not sure I would have done early on. I probably wouldn't have done that in my first couple Spider-Man games for sure.
Yeah.
I guess we can
Are
explain
you
how
always
this
counting
works.
cards?
Uh, yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I don't try
It's I
to
mean, why wouldn't you?
anymore. Like I don't it's not something I
Yeah.
think about anymore. But it's just playing on expert and solo against those hard villains so many times on my stream.
Mhm.
I just innately count cards now.
Yeah.
Like cuz I don't
And
have to
I think
think
that makes
about it.
sense.
I just like every time I see, "Oh, there's an advance." It just logs in my brain now. And I'm like, "Okay, I know the villain doesn't have any advances anymore, so I can flip down to alter ego." And then the heroes I've
Right. There you
played, I'm
go.
like, I know how many I count how many swing web kicks. I'm like, I have some like, do I want to reset my deck before I go for a final push, or can I go now? That kind of thing.
Yep.
I'm just I just innately do at this point.
Yeah.
I guess I can explain how the Rhino
Um,
scenario works. So this is
yeah.
the second homebrew scenario I made. So the idea of this is that I wanted Rhino to team up with the Sinister Six. So we have this Sinister Assault modular that has like the Hobgoblin and Scorpion and Doctor Octopus and Craven Electro, all those minions. I think Vulture is the last one I missed there, and it's kind of a hard modular set. And then so the idea here was that every player at the start of the game will discard cards from the top of the deck until they get a Sinister Six minion. And then every time you take out a Sinister Six minion, Rhino gets really mad at you and gets a rage counter. And then he gets +1 attack for each rage counter. So in this 3-player game that we played, Johnny was Spider Ham and I was Peter Parker. I used we got 3 Sinister Six minions. We took them out. Rhino got +3 attack. And then when Rhino makes an attack where he has rage counters like equal to or greater than the number of players in the game, you discard the rage counters after that. So you get a little more pressure from Rhino at the start of the game, and then you really have to deal with that big attack because when he gets charged and has +3 attack and then his horn, so he has like +4 attack, and on side 2 he has 3 attacks. So that's like 7 base attack that you can get up to, and then plus the counters. It can be hard to deal with, especially when that charge attack has overkill. So it kind of makes
Mhm.
Rhino threatening in a way that a lot of people don't think of him as threatening, which was interesting because we tested this on expert. I don't know. Why don't you talk
Yeah.
about your before I talk about this next part? How'd you feel about
Mhm.
this and Spider Ham?
Sure. So this was my first encounter with Rhino. It was my first time playing Ham. Um, and so I could see again, Rhino being an early designed villain. I could see why um, I can see the complexity creep coming later, and I think Rhino, for example, has an encounter card, which all it does is give him a tough card, um, and that's good if you're learning the game. I think it's you know having something an encounter card that simple makes sense. So obviously he's a good teaching tool, but at this point, a tough card is like a third of an encounter card for another later designed villain, which I enjoy and appreciate. So I value having those teaching tools and having those simpler villains, but um, I also like the greater challenge. Um, and so adding this other layer of it with the rage counters um, felt more appropriately scaled to someone like me who's still like not totally experienced yet, but um, can still work my way through most things that are thrown at me. Um, yeah, it felt like a good, um, reasonable challenge. Um, when it comes to Spider-Ham, boy, do I love him. Uh, I think on turn 1, I was already recognizing the value of, being able to convert damage into wild resources because I was dealt Electro as my, Sinister Six villain, and I thought, "Boy, it would be really great if I had 1 more resource available to me. Oh, I can just attack Electro because he has Retaliate 1. That'll put a wild resource counter on me, and from there, it's off to the races."
Yeah,
Um, and yeah, I think this again is this is maybe my favorite encapsulation of what I've mentioned a few times, converting lore or a character's superpowers into game mechanics. Just the way that they perfectly capture Toon Force, turning damage into wild resources. I think this is my favorite example of that. Because I don't know, I grew up on like Looney Tunes and Three Stooges, and um, I don't know. I saw a movie recently called Hundreds of Beavers, which is very slapstick. Has a lot of
I've
cartoony.
never heard of that. Hundreds of
uh,
beavers.
Hundreds of Beavers. It was made by some filmmakers from Wisconsin on a shoestring budget, and it's black and white. It's a mostly silent movie, but made like a couple of years ago, in the Wisconsin wilderness, and it's really entertaining. Anyway, I have a love for like slapstick comedy like that, and so um, this this just like scratched that itch for me. Learning, oh yeah, Spider Ham. Uh, he can get flattened. Like I don't know, the art on cartoon physics is
Yeah,
just
I
so
like that
great.
a lot.
Um, he's
And
got
he's
a big
from
old
the
walloping
Spider-Verse
hammer.
movie too.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And again, John Mulaney is one of my favorite comedians, so it all ties together, into why I love Ham. But yeah, I liked this scenario a lot, um, mainly because I was learning Ham, um, and I think the three are these three heroes. We worked pretty well together. Where Paulina was playing Protection Ghost Spider, she was able to make a lot of use out of that. Um,
I was playing the
and
aggression precon deck from the core box.
that's right, yeah. Um, yeah, I think they all worked together pretty well, and I don't know. There was like a couple of times where um, Rhino was stunned. You had backflip in your hand, and he was going to attack you first. So I said, "Oh, I'll just play Petulant Pig." So he attacks me, gets rid of that stun, and you can use your backflip.
Yeah,
So I don't know. There were a couple of interlocking puzzle pieces that worked out great in that way. So I really enjoyed this game.
yeah. I really like this one too, which is funny because you're talking about how well these characters work together.
Hmm.
They also counter Rhino really hard, which is
Yeah.
funny because when the people in my Discord play tested it, the feedback was just like, I it's just too much damage. Like
Sure.
he's attacking for 10 and these
Yeah.
minions are really difficult and it's just like
Yep.
really really hard. And I'm like, I can see how if you did not have cartoon physics and backflip and Gwen defending for like 5 or more, how you could
Hmm.
just die. so
Yeah.
so yeah, I made some adjustments to this one as well. Um
Okay.
so first, because again, I wanted it to be really scary and expert. So I left it how it is in expert. But for
Yeah.
standard, I I just removed the surge from the minions. So you get like
Gotcha.
one less encounter card. And that brings down the difficulty quite a bit. So then I
Hmm.
play tested it on stream twice using I still use Spider-Man, but I was using Precon Spider-Man and Precon Iron Man in the different aspects. So I was able
Yeah.
to win with I think I used the first game with leadership Iron Man and protection Peter Parker, I won that one, and the next one was Aggression Iron Man and Justice Peter Parker. So I was able to, with the core box on standard, like pretty easily defeat this scenario, um, with the precon decks, all the different aspects for the precon decks. So
Hmm.
I think it's in a
Wow,
better spot now for
nice.
standard. But then yeah, and this does scale up. It gets harder in multiplayer because of those counters. And yeah, so
Yeah.
the expert with Surge on the minions will definitely be a challenge. And also,
Yeah.
I added an adjustment for single player because you know how Rhino's scheme is only 7 per player, and these minions are
Hmm.
difficult. So if
Yeah.
you flip down for like one turn when like one of the higher scheme minions is out and they have villainous and there's triple boosts in the deck now, you'll just like lose.
Hmm.
So for solo, I added a optional thing of you can put under surveillance on the main scheme, so it increases the threat threshold by 4 to make it a
Yeah.
bit easier. So
Hmm.
I think it's in a better spot now. That was
Nice.
funny because I was like, oh yeah, I was using the precon Spider-Man deck, and we did it on expert, and we were chilling the whole time, but we also
Yeah.
countered it entirely. But I kind of like that too, that the spider characters do better against Rhino than like if you throw in Hawkeye to go fight the
Yeah.
Sinister Six.
At some point, we saw. There, I think there's a Rhino minion, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, it's in the claw scenario.
Yes. Okay. And he has 8 health, and I played a swinging web kick on him, and Polina remarked, "Oh, that might be by design. That
Yeah,
swinging web kick deals 8 damage, and this Rhino minion has 8 health.
yeah, it probably
It
was.
feels perfect." Yeah. Um, but I agree. I think that's really great. Anytime you can tie in thematically that way, uh, it's just more rewarding. Yeah.
I guess we can move on now. Is this the
Mhm.
final one? Yeah, this is the final one, huh?
This is it. Yeah.
Yeah, do you want to
So
explain what you had going on this slide?
I threw in 3 visuals here because there were 3 kind of topics that I have enjoyed talking about. We've already touched on it a lot, but, um, the first one here is, the pattern-seeking brain and just how, you know, the human brain is a remarkable thing, and it can see this clock tower or just this tower, and it can see the face of a chicken, which was
Yeah.
maybe not necessarily by design. Um, and in a similar way, it's just really rewarding, and it scratches that itch when you see, oh yeah, Mjolnir returns to Thor's hand when he plays Hammer Throw, and um, Spider Ham's Toon Force is how he can turn the damage into wild resources, and Swinging Web Kick deals 8 damage because Spider Man has 8 legs. You know, these are all examples of.
Yeah.
Um,
I hadn't thought about that 8 legs one before. I wonder if the designers did that on purpose or if that's just. Anyway,
I
either
was trying
way,
to
I think it's great.
I was trying to roll past that without laughing.
No,
I was trying
it's
to
just it.
sneak
It's
that one over the
because
plate.
he has 8 legs that it does 8 damage. It's just how it works.
um,
Yeah, that's really cool.
yeah, I don't know. I might have a misprint card or something, but anyway, yeah, I think this game. One of the great joys I find in it is those little things, and the way they've adapted decades and decades of lore into these interesting mechanics. So that's one of my main thoughts on the game, and I think maybe for me anyway is kind of a strong selling point. Um, one of the reasons Wingspan is my favorite game is because that behaves very similarly, where um, all these really cool, unique birds, all of the cards are based on real life science. Where if a bird in real life makes its nest in an interesting and unique way, well then its nest in the game is like the wild type nest. I'm just going to share a fun fact about one of my favorite birds, the burrowing owl, which um, they make their nests in old prairie dog burrows, and so in this game, it has like a special type of nest. Um, yeah, just little things like that come up a lot in Champions, and I'm always delighted to find those.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know if you have any examples that you want to talk about, but we've touched on the topic quite a bit already.
Yeah, so some of my favorite like themed heroes, one that immediately pops into my head is Rogue of like
Hmm.
she has that touched attachment, and then if you put touched on a friendly character, you deal 1 damage to it because of her power. But then you also
Yep.
gain that character's traits, which is really cool. And then she gets aerial, which this is something that is kind of like an Easter egg that I didn't know about until I watched
Hmm.
the old 90s cartoon. Is that Rogue's powers that she had were just the absorbing powers from other people. That's like her mutant power. But then
Hmm.
the reason she has super strength and flies around is because back then she Mystique took her on this mission and she like touched Miss Marvel, and there was this
Yeah,
interaction they had to where Rogue permanently
Miss
got
Marvel
Miss
or
Marvel's
Captain
power.
Marvel?
Oh, it was the black suited Captain Marvel, which is Carol Danvers, but I think maybe it's Captain Marvel at that point, but it's like a different version of Captain Marvel. Not the Miss
Yeah,
Marvel, like the Kamala Khan one, but
Kamala Khan.
I can't remember. The black suit one I thought was
Okay.
Miss Marvel, but it might be Captain Marvel still. I can't remember. But
Mm.
touched uh, Carol Danvers and then
Mhm.
permanently absorbed her super strength and flight powers because of some sort of
Yeah,
like interaction that happened. And
yeah,
and then when in the game, when she touches an ally, she gains the aerial trait, which I
yeah,
didn't realize that until I watched the cartoon, which is really cool. And then
yeah,
it
that's
also
great.
brings up a lot of deck building stuff. So like there's this Web Warrior uh, rogue deck I made that was pretty fun where you put into a Web Warrior
Oh,
ally into play, you touched the Web Warrior ally, you gain the Web Warrior trait, and then access to all of those cards. And then another thing people
mhm,
like to do is use the Mystic allies, touch the Mystic ally, and then gain
yeah,
access to like Sorcerer Supreme and all that stuff. So that's fun from a deck building perspective. And then when
yeah,
she touches the villain, she gains Retaliate, which is like the damage she deals. I just really like that.
mhm,
And then
yeah,
Phoenix is another great example of that. Of when you're playing as in restrained form, she has like high thwart and stuff like that. But then she has these
yeah,
power counters, and when you go through them all and you use them up, she becomes unleashed, and then you get like the full power of the Phoenix at that point. Which that's
mhm,
just really cool having this whole thing you're trying to balance of do you want to be unleashed and have a higher chance of Dark Phoenix coming out, or do you want to stay restrained and have more thwart and like be a controlling type character?
mm,
I prefer to
yeah,
unleash and just do a bunch of damage, but I really like that whole thing.
yeah,
Yeah, and then
yeah. Kudos to the designers for all this because some of this I'm learning about for the first time, and I'm like, "Oh, that's so cool."
yeah, and like Iron Man like literally builds his
Mhm,
suit. That's really fun.
right,
I didn't
yeah,
like him that much when I first started playing, but now that I'm much better at the game, he's much more fun, and that's really fun.
yeah,
I like there's a lot of things like with those patterns that I really like.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, we could probably talk about it endlessly.
Yeah,
Um, the the next still I have here is, it's screenshot from Dark Souls, or I have never played Dark Souls, but it is always mentioned as, the upper echelon or the benchmark of difficulty in games. So here's where we maybe lose some folks, because or
yeah,
you say we lose some folks because, I have played on expert for most of the time that I've been playing this game, and I find that, like, really, uh, fun and challenging, and I think if I'm not mistaken, the only time I've lost this game is when you and I just tested out Ronin, expert Ronin, for the fun of it.
It was
And
expert to standard to Ronin when I
yeah,
wasn't playing a good deck and you were playing Hawkeye.
Hawkeye for the first time.
Yeah.
Um, so that has been my taste of failure in this game. Um, so uh, take all of what I'm saying with a grain of salt. But I think having yeah, another grain of salt is that I've mostly only played 3-player. I really haven't had to slog through solo, and the whole time I've had, access to Alec and Polina's card library and also their brains, just talking through moves and yeah, being able to prepare uh, decks in that way. But I enjoy the difficulty level of this game where yeah, in those campaigns especially that felt higher stakes where, damage carries over into the next scenario and that all felt like a good challenge. And but um yeah, the reason I put this Dark Souls guy in here is because I feel like I am just like incredibly blessed, and I haven't actually had a taste of difficulty in this game quite yet.
Yeah.
I haven't had to refine my decks too much because I'm still learning, what's working and not working about it. So
Yeah. I think you will, because next thing we're doing is Sinister Motives in campaign mode.
yeah.
I'm playing Peter Parker with a core deck or a core box precon. So I'm not
Hmm.
going to be doing my Psylocke shenanigans anymore. And
Yes.
then we're going to fight Venom Goblin in 3-player. And I don't want
Hmm.
to spoil what he does, but I'm going to let you take the lead on that and
Okay.
we'll see if you we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to that one and
You
playing some
might
more
taste
Spider Ham.
defeat, maybe. You might not be
Okay.
powerful enough to do it, but you are playing Spider Ham, who is very powerful.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like I
I
think what you're
definitely
gonna run
agree.
into is since I'll try my best, but I will not try my best in deck building. I will have a
Hmm.
standard deck that is
Yep.
good but not broken. And then when we get to Venom Goblin on expert, we might need something broken. And it's not going to be me that does it. So you'll have to refine. You're going to have to refine your deck, probably.
All right. I love that. I love that. Um, yeah. Again, like going in blind to a lot of this stuff um, adds to the challenge, but makes it so much more worth it afterwards. Um, so again, approaching most games that way, where I'm not too keen on pulling up a wiki page and figuring out, the boss's mechanics or whatever, um, and trying to go through it myself for the first time. Um, that is it's really not been my experience here for the most part, because of resources like your videos and Marvel Card Database and things like that. Um, I try to do it where I can, but um, yeah, I think it is. It's been. I would say the most difficult part of this game has just been a learning curve, realizing that there is for any given hand, there is at least two valid approaches and reasonable approaches. Um, and
Yeah.
just through experience, you're going to find, yeah, one of them is probably more reliable. Um, and you should probably prepare in this way. But I think the difficulty of it, I cannot fully comment on because I haven't known defeat.
Yeah, all you
But
know is that you've never lost.
pretty much, pretty much.
Yeah.
Um,
You have like a what, like a 95% win rate with your only loss being Hawkeye versus standard 2 expert 2 Ronin.
yeah, something like that.
Yeah, we'll see
Um,
how long that holds. I'm
right.
excited to see how long it holds too.
um, and then yeah, the last visual I put on this slide was just a couple of my favorite cards in that X-23 aggression deck, Hall of Heroes and Lion Weight. And these were two cards I probably mentioned that I picked kind of just based on vibes and the fact that I really liked the art and they just sounded cool. And so I thought, even if they're not like completely optimal, which I found through play that they're still very good cards, but I didn't fully know that going in. Um, and so I thought, regardless of how it turns out, I think I will still have fun playing with these cards, and it turned out I did. So I think it's uh, something you've said in a couple of your deck building videos is it is a valid approach to add things that you think are fun, even if you don't think they're like that optimal.
Yeah.
Uh, so I
I
can
value
definitely
fun
attest to that.
over optimizing things.
Oh yeah, without question, and just you know uh, being able to play a card that has Moon Knight on there in the jungle, I'm like I'm happy. I'm
Yeah.
happy with that. So
When you play
I
that card Lion Weight,
yeah.
the way you feel about it, do you feel like you're lying in wait as whatever hero, or do you feel like you're just hiring Moon Knight to just jump someone?
um, I was picturing my hero kind of lying in wait.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it was X-23 with that. Um, so, but again, if there's someone at Fantasy Flight who's watching this video this far in, listen to me. Make a Moon Knight character so I don't have to, and make
Yeah.
it the best character so that everyone plays him. And the art's really cool, and also make a J. Jonah Jameson villain.
I would like that a lot as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious to see where they go. Yeah, I guess I don't know. Any closing remarks on your experience with Marvel Champions?
Um, it's all been, colored by the fact that I had access to every card there is through you. So I got to thank you for that. And I know that that's definitely kind of a privilege for um, compared to most people's experiences with the game. Um, I also think it is worth struggling through a little bit on your own learning some of these things. And I haven't really fully had that experience, but I'm excited to try more of that as new things come out. So
Yeah. Yeah, we'll struggle through because I won't know what the next villains are coming up as, and
yeah.
I think I'm gonna focus because like I was in a try hard mode for a while of just like I want to figure out what's strong and beat these powerful villains, and I'm
Hmm.
kind of I'm kind of over that part recently. So I'm gonna make some just fun stuff going forward for us to do,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna
Beautiful.
let you carry me as Spider Ham.
All right. Can do.
Okay, I think I don't have anything left to say.
Yeah. I think I'm good.
Okay, well, thank you to anyone that made it through this much of our ramblings. Yeah, if you want to like and subscribe, there'll be more stuff to watch, I promise. And Johnny might appear on the channel a few more times if you liked him as well.
Oh,
And
please no mean comments.
no mean
Please.
comments. Don't be mean to Johnny.
No, you can take it. Hey, the self-hatred is mutual, man. So you guys can say whatever you want.
You'll go like it in the comment section.
I say that and then someone says like, you could have been a little funnier, and you don't hear from me for a month. I've moved to a different state, and I'm going by John now.
Yeah, we'll just we'll see. We'll see. We'll see if Johnny stays Johnny, or if I'm gonna have to do a new episode saying here's John, but that won't work as well.
All right.
Okay.
Hey,
Well,
thanks for this. Thanks for this talk, dude.
yeah, no problem. And I
Yeah.
also got a new game for my birthday. I got Marvel
Oh,
Zombicide, so we can try that as well.
interesting. Yeah, I'll check. We'll have to check that out.
Yeah. So, stay zesty, everyone, and I will be back in not that long with some new videos. Peace.